Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into, well, a really significant federal framework. It's all about who controls, accesses, and views sensitive academic information. And, when education went digital, the risks didn't exactly decrease. If anything, they got way more complex.
Oh, absolutely. The stakes for getting it right, especially for individual compliance, went way up.
So what's our focus today?
Right. We're zeroing in on FERPA. That's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's really the bedrock of student data protection in the U.S.
FERPA. Got it.
And our mission here isn't just to, define the acronym. We want to clarify the actionable steps the real compliance needs, especially now with everything online. It's surprisingly easy to slip up accidentally.
Yeah, I can imagine. And this applies broadly, doesn't it, to pretty much any school getting federal money.
That's right. K through 12, colleges, universities, if they receive funds under an applicable Department of Education program, FERPA applies. It's a huge net.
But what really stands out, and the source material really hammers this home, is the individual accountability part. It's not just the institution's problem.
Exactly. That's the key takeaway for anyone listening who works in education. Sure, the institution sets policy, but faculty, staff, administrators, you are individually on the hook for how you handle student records. Every single time.
So messing up an email or how you post grades isn't just a minor procedural thing.
Nope. It's not just a slap on the university's wrist. It reflects directly on your professional duties. And that high bar FERPA sets, it applies just as much, maybe even more, in digital settings.
That really sets the stage. So let's start with the student's view, because FERPA is ultimately about empowering them, right? This happens under what's often called the Buckley Amendment. The rights kick in once they enroll in a post-secondary institution. So what are those main rights? The pillars of power that shift to the student.
Okay, so there are 4 core rights that really define the student's control over their own academic story. First, and this is maybe the most basic, they have the right to inspect and review their education records.
Inspect and review. Now, does that mean the university has to, instantly pull up anything the student asks for? Or are there practical limits?
That's a really good question. Gets right at the practical side. They have the right to review, yes. But the source is clarified doesn't mean the university must, create a brand new report just because a student demands it in a specific format.
Oh.
They have to provide access to the existing records within a reasonable time frame. But they aren't required to, say, synthesize data or generate custom reports on the fly.
That makes sense from an administrative standpoint. Keeps it manageable. Okay, what are the other 3?
Right. Second, the student gets control over disclosure. This is the privacy piece. Who gets to see their information and when?
Control over disclosure. Makes sense.
Third, they have the right to seek to amend incorrect education records. This is important. If they spot an error, maybe a wrong major listed, or an attendance mistake, they have a formal way to challenge it and get it fixed.
And what if the university says, no, we think the record is correct? What happens then?
Well, that leads directly to the 4th right. If they feel their challenge wasn't handled properly or their rights were violated in some way, they can file a formal complaint.
Where do they file that?
With the U.S. Department of Education's Family Policy Compliance Office, there's an official channel for escalating concerns.
Okay, 4 key rights. Now, let's get to the part that probably causes the most confusion and maybe even friction, especially for families, the post-secondary transfer rule.
Yes.
I think a lot of people assume, maybe naturally, that if a parent is still paying tuition or the student lives at home, they'd automatically keep some rights to see grades or check on attendance. But the source material says that's just not true, right?
That is absolutely the biggest aha moment, or maybe oh no moment, for many families when they encounter FERPA. The rights transfer entirely to the student the moment they enroll in a post-secondary institution, period.
Wow. So age doesn't matter, even if they're 17 or 18?
Age is irrelevant. They could be 18, they could be 48. Once they are enrolled in that college or university, the student, and only the student, holds those FERPA rights.
So let's paint a picture. An 18-year-old student is living at home, parents are footing the bill, mom or dad calls the university wanting to know their kid's GPA. The university legally has to say no.
Precisely. Parents, spouses, partners, other relatives, none of them have an automatic right to access that protected information. Same goes for potential employers, by the way.
Okay.
For the university to share anything protected, grades, transcripts, financial aid details, disciplinary records with anyone other than the student or authorized officials, they need the student's explicit written consent.
Written consent. That's the key.
Without that signed form, the answer has to be, we can't release that information.
That's a really powerful shift in control. Are there any exceptions built into the law? Any situations where the university can disclose without that written consent?
There is one very specific, narrow exception related to student conduct. Disclosure is permitted without consent to a parent or legal guardian of a student who is under 21 if the institution determines that the student violated its rules on drug or alcohol use.
Okay, under 21 and specifically drugs or alcohol. That's it.
That's basically it for parental notification without consent. Notice how specific it is. It doesn't cover poor grades, academic dishonesty, other behavioral issues, just that specific violation for students under 21. Outside of that narrow window, written consent is the only safe harbor.
That level of detail really underscores how seriously compliance is taken. Okay, let's switch gears now to the practical side for instructors and staff. The digital rulebook. This seems like where things can easily go wrong, right? With everyday stuff like email and grades.
Absolutely. High-volume, repetitive actions create the biggest risks for accidental breaches. Let's start with just basic email communication. What's the rule for emailing a whole class?
Okay, yeah. What do we need to know?
The absolute main thing is protecting student contact information. That email address, it's considered restricted educational data under FERPA.
Right.
So when you're emailing multiple students, like a whole class announcement, you must use the blind carbon copy or BCC feature.
BCC. Always BCC.
Always. You cannot reveal one student's email address to all their classmates. That's a disclosure violation.
And I know a lot of the learning management systems, the LMS platforms,
Yeah.
like Lamaku, which we use based on D12 Brightspace, they often handle that automatically if you use the internal class list email tool.
Exactly. And that automation is a huge help, prevents a lot of mistakes. But here's another common slip-up. Talking about a student internally. Say you need to loop in an advisor or another faculty member about a student's email or concern.
Okay, what's the issue there?
The best practice, strongly recommended, is to paraphrase what the student said rather than just forwarding the entire email chain.
Why the distinction? If the recipient is another university employee who might have a legitimate reason to know.
Because that original student email, it often contains more than just the core information needed. It might have, metadata, maybe personal details in the signature, context about their situation that the advisor doesn't actually need to know to address the specific educational issue.
I see.
Paraphrasing ensures you're only sharing the minimum necessary information for that legitimate educational interest. It limits the scope of the disclosure, even internally.
Minimizing exposure. Makes sense. Okay, now the big one. Grades. Grades are obviously sensitive data. What's the absolute safest, most FERPA-compliant way for a student to find out their grade?
There's really only one guaranteed safe place. The password-protected grades tool inside the official learning management system, Lamaku, Canvas, whatever the institution uses.
So no emailing grades, even if the student asks.
Definitely not. The source material is crystal clear on this. Notifying students of grades via email or text or social media messaging, it's inherently a potential violation because you simply cannot guarantee confidentiality or security over those channels.
Okay, wait. So if a student emails me directly, hey, what did I get on the final exam? And I just reply with the grade, technically I could be violating FERPA, even though they asked.
Yes, potentially. And that's a really common pitfall for faculty. Think about it. What if their email gets hacked later? What if you accidentally typo the address? Protected data has just been sent through an insecure channel.
Right.
The correct and required response is always to refer the student back to the secure LMS. Your grade is posted in Lamaku. Please check there. No exceptions.
Wow. Okay, and what about posting grades publicly, like on an office door or a website? We know we can't use names, but what about student ID numbers? Can we use, say, the last 4 digits?
Absolutely not. No personal identifiers, full names, or full student ID numbers. And critically, partial student ID numbers are also not okay without the student's explicit written permission beforehand. You'd need a signed form for that.
Okay, no partial IDs without permission. What else?
And another crucial point. Lists of grades should never be posted in alphabetical order by student name.
Why is alphabetical order specifically a problem? Seems like a convenient way to organize.
It's a problem because it can inadvertently create a link back to the student's identity. If a class roster is available somewhere, even without grades, comparing an alphabetized grade list makes it potentially easy for someone to figure out who got what grade. It's like a puzzle piece that makes identification possible.
Okay, that makes sense. Avoid alphabetical lists. What about physical stuff? We still have paper, sometimes graded tests, attendance sheets. Do the same rules apply?
They do. Confidentiality isn't just digital. You can't leave a stack of graded papers just sitting out on a desk in a public area for students to rifle through. That's a breach. And similarly, passing around a class list for attendance where everyone writes their name next to their pre-printed student ID number, that exposes every student's ID to everyone else in the room. Need a different method.
This really touches every aspect of teaching. Okay, let's tackle the modern classroom challenge. Using external digital tools, blogs, wikis, maybe a public social media group for discussion. If I, as an instructor, require students to post their work outside our secure LMS, what are my FERPA obligations?
Okay, this is a big one. You have two main responsibilities here. First, you absolutely must be transparent about the risks.
How so?
Your course syllabus needs to clearly state that using this public tool involves potential public disclosure of personally identifiable information. Students have to be warned up front. That's non-negotiable.
Okay, clear warning in the syllabus was the second part.
You must give students an option to protect their identity. They need to have the choice to use an alias or a pseudonym if they're uncomfortable using their real name on that public platform.
So anonymity option.
Exactly. If the assignment requires public posting, their real identity doesn't have to be public too. They need that choice.
That seems like a workable solution. Now, what about the tools themselves? Let's say I find a cool, free online tool, maybe a free version of Google Classroom or some third-party wiki platform. Does using something like that, something not officially licensed by the university, create FERPA problems?
It absolutely can, yes. This is a major point of caution. When you're choosing digital tools, the safest bet is always to prioritize platforms that have an official site license or agreement with the university system.
Why is that so important?
Because those free versions, often their terms of service allow them to collect, share, or even monetize student data, including identifiable information. They might not be designed with FERPA compliance in mind at all.
Okay.
An officially licensed platform, however, comes with a contract. The university has vetted it and has an agreement that ensures the vendor handles student data according to FERPA rules. Using an unapproved third-party tool puts student data, and frankly the instructor, at significant risk.
Stick to the approved tools. That's a really clear takeaway for the digital side. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what's protected. But not all student data is top secret, right? There's this category called directory information.
That's right. We've established that education records are generally private, but FERPA allows institutions to designate certain information as directory information. This stuff is considered generally public and can be disclosed without prior consent, unless the student objects.
Okay, so what kinds of things fall under directory information? It's not grades or anything like that, obviously.
No, definitely not grades. It's usually fairly basic, non-sensitive stuff. The university defines its own list, but typically it includes things like the student's name, major field of study, their class level, like freshman, sophomore, dates of attendance, any previous institutions they attended, degrees and honors or awards they've received, and participation in officially recognized activities and sports. For athletes, this can even include their listed weight and height. There are usually around 11 or so specific categories.
So the university can release, say, a list of graduating seniors, or the dean's list, or announce athletic team rosters to the public. And they don't need to get individual consent forms from every single student on those lists.
Correct. That's the point of designating it directory information. They can disclose these specific items. However, and this is the crucial part, the student retains control. Any student can tell the university, usually through a specific process with the registrar's office, I want to opt out. They can request that none of their directory information be released or just specific parts of it.
Oh, they can put a block on it.
Exactly. They have to affirmatively opt out, but if they do, then even their name or major becomes protected, just like their grades, and cannot be released without their specific consent.
That covers the exception well. You know, this whole deep dive really hammers home just how complex FERPA is, especially now in the digital age. It's not just about knowing the rules, it's about constant diligence, isn't it? In every email, every grade entry, every tool you choose.
That's it, exactly. That high bar for individual accountability we talked about at the start, that's the thread running through all of this.
So as we wrap up, what's one final thought for people to really mull over?
Okay, I think the most critical nuance to keep front of mind relates to that idea of legitimate educational interest. Remember, consent isn't needed for university officials who have that interest.
Right. The internal sharing.
Yes, but we have to be incredibly strict about defining that interest. And the source material gives us a perfect, bright line rule that everyone should basically memorize. Neither curiosity nor personal interest constitutes a legitimate need to know.
Wow. Say that again.
Neither curiosity nor personal interest constitutes a legitimate need to know. If you're looking at a student's record, ask yourself, is this absolutely required for me to do my specific job duties right now? If the answer is anything other than a clear yes, step away. That's the standard. That's the integrity FERPA demands.